Hello everyone and welcome to this video. So today we're going to be talking about how to make the most of the paid channel mix data studio dashboard created by Bind Media. Let's go through what we're going to cover in this video. So first I'm going to introduce Bind Media and Supermetrics to you. Then I will say a couple of words about the speakers. And after that, Elliot and Elliot will take it from here and talk about the paid channel mix Google Data Studio dashboard, what parts it consists of, and how you can use it. And then they will cover why you should use the Ad Data and Google Analytics connector, which is a powerhouse of this whole paid channel mix dashboard. And then they will touch on enriching your reports with custom metrics and dimensions, what these are, and how you can set each specific custom dimension and metric up. And lastly, they will conclude with how you can modify your paid channel mix Google Data Studio dashboard and make it your own. So let's get started. A couple of words about Bind Media. So Bind Media is a specialist biddable media agency based in Bath, UK, and they help clients drive fantastic return on ad spend through cutting edge paid media, conversion growth, and analytics with a very, very strong emphasis on tech. Supermetrics is your marketing data reporting and analytics tool. And in this example, we're going to be focusing on getting data from data sources. You can see on the left-hand side to Google Data Studio, and you can see there is Google Data Studio on the right-hand side among many, many other data destinations you can transfer your data to. Over 500,000 people use Supermetrics to move data from popular marketing platforms to their favorite analytics, reporting, and data warehouse tools. And 10% of global online ad spend is reported through Supermetrics. So that's pretty impressive. And now let me introduce the speakers who will take it from there. So we have Elliot Sheen, who is a co-founder at Bind Media, and Elliot Chiner, who is also co-founder at Bind Media. And I'm Anna Shutko, a product marketing manager at Supermetrics. So with that, I am giving it to Elliot and Elliot.
Hi everyone, so it's Elliot and Elliot here from Bind Media. As Anna mentioned, we are a performance marketing agency based out of the southwest of the UK in Bath. So super excited to be collaborating with Supermetrics on this dashboard project. So we've produced a dashboard template that utilizes Supermetrics' paid channel mix connector. So out the box, that will connect data from the top 5 ad channels as listed here on the screen. So Google Ads, Microsoft Ads, Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn with the additional context of Google Analytics. So the template that we've produced gives you an overview. It dives deeper into the channel level with all of the relevant filters. And as I said, it's combined with that Google Analytics data. What we've aimed to do with the template is make it much more customizable than other templates we've found that exist in the market already. So we've used a modular approach, which we'll dive into, but the aim is that you can really take this as a starting point, visualize your data in a way that's relevant and appropriate for your business. So I'm going to run through the dashboard template, and then I'm going to throw it over to my co-founder, Elliot, who's going to run through some functions examples of how you can get some more out of your data as well. Right, so this is it, the paid channel mix dashboard. Forgive the minor theatre, but this is a proud moment for us releasing this. So as you'll see here, we have an overview page that details all 5 or as many of the ad platforms as you've chosen to plug in using Supermetrics' connector. So you'll notice lots of the metrics here. So currency metrics, for example, we have left the currency symbol blank so that you can customize that and make it relevant to the currencies that your account is in. And notice down the right hand side here the filters. So on the overview page we only have one filter. Outside of selecting your data sources and selecting a date range, we just have a campaign filter. Now that's because that is a dimension that is comparable and relevant across all of these ad platform data sources. As we progress and show you examples of the individual channel pages, you'll notice there are many more options available then to filter and to segment your performance through the individual channels. Be mindful as well of these additional options you have on specific visualizations. So in this chart, for example, we have the option to drill up and drill down. So we're currently on a date here. Now you can drill up to week and beyond that point as well to month, year, etc. So just something to note as you're using the dashboard, as you're visualizing your data. Additionally, here there's an optional metrics selection. So we've pre-selected some metrics that we think are relevant. There's very much lead gen focus in this instance, but of course, it's a copyable template. So when you have access, you'll be able to switch this to metrics that are relevant and have additional metrics that you can add to these visualizations as well. Great, so that is the overview page. Now let's dive into a deeper level page. So I have a channel page here and we're looking at Facebook ads. So the first thing you'll notice is that down the right hand side, we've got a number of additional options of filters that we can then use to segment this data. So device is a new one, ad group as well, and conversion window. So this is a fairly recent addition from Data Studio's side, the ability to use filters to change parameters that are sets of settings relevant to the data source itself. So with Supermetrics' paid channel mix connector, we actually have the ability to change the conversion window default that is pushed through. So by selecting this, we can move away or segment additionally based on optional conversion window settings. So by default, Facebook is going to report 28-day post-click and 1-day post-view. You can change that to something that is more relevant to your business or perhaps how you are analyzing those results within Facebook ads itself. Again, the visualizations are changing as well. So here, demographic was more relevant to be displayed. And of course, we have the device segmentation for Facebook. So as you're scrolling through and as you're flicking through the individual channel pages, note what we've decided to display. Now, of course, it's fully customizable, so take this and tweak it. You know, we've made some recommendations and suggestions here, but by all means, you'll have a full copyable version of the report. So do change these visualizations so that they're relevant to you and to your account. So the final page of the dashboard here displays Google Analytics data. So metrics that you will be familiar with, sessions, users, bounce rate, etc. And of course, the beauty of this is all comparable with your paid ads data sources. So you can see here we've got Google and Bing paid data alongside all of our goal completions in this pivot table at the bottom. So again, filters relevant to Google Analytics data. So here in source, for example, something you'll notice here, we've got Facebook and FB coming through as a source, and also Twitter and Twitter paid. So we've left this in to show you that the connector itself has a setting to transform this data. So if you have this duplication, what you can do in the settings of the Supermetrics connector is change that. So we could transpose FB to become Facebook. So that is a setting within the connector itself, and that allows you to then unify all of this source data. Again, we've used Data Studio's parameter feature here to allow you to change some settings of the connector. So we have an option here to try and avoid data sampling wherever possible from GA. So we can insert a value here of true to enable that, or leave it blank for that to be disabled. Now there is a note, of course, if we're trying to fetch completely unsampled data, that can slow down your data fetching. So depending on the size of the data that you're pulling, you might want to consider that as an option. Great, so we've ran through the overview page. We jumped into some of the specific channels and the relevant filters that then appear down the right hand side. Now let's talk more about the template itself and the modular approach we've taken. So here is an example of a fully blank page within the report. So if I jump into the page view here, what you'll see is for every page, so the overview and the individual channel pages, beneath that there is a template version of that page that is currently hidden, but they will all be very similar to this. So if you, for example, weren't happy with the way the data was displayed on one of the channel pages, or you wanted to customize that further, then take a look at one of these template pages. This is effectively a blank version of that page, but with the relevant channel selected here on the navigation down the left hand side. So the beauty of that then, it's fully customizable. So this page here, as an example, is a full blank page with none of this left-hand navigation selected, but we have the individual channels present here as well. So why use the Ad Data and Google Analytics connector? The main reason here really is the 3-in-1 that you get with the product. So storing your data, transforming that and making your metrics comparable across all of the ad platforms you decide to plug in, and connecting that through to Data Studio for visualization, all in one. So we've touched on aggregated ad platform metrics, so your clicks, impressions, cost, etc., all combined across the channels that you decide to plug in. You then have the option of platform and analytics conversions. So think about goals and e-commerce metrics that are pulled through from analytics. You have the ability to compare that to your platform level data. Another benefit of that then is the deduplication of conversions, and this is talking specifically to utilizing analytics goals and e-com data. So let's say you have a user that interacts with multiple ad campaigns, clicks through a number of your channels over a longer sales cycle. The benefit then is that would default to Google Analytics' last non-direct attribution model. So many of your paid channels might take credit for those conversions, but by connecting it just through using Google Analytics, you would get that deduplicated. So you would get a more accurate figure as an end result. For more advanced users, so if you are using the Google Analytics measurement protocol, let's say you're uploading offline conversions, or you're using rebilling. So an example would be a SaaS tool, and you have customers that upgrade their plans, or they decide to take on, a pro plan after a free trial, as an example. If you are feeding that back through to Google Analytics using the measurement protocol, then that will retrospectively be added and attributed to the appropriate paid channel. Now that's something that's very difficult to do through the individual channel conversions themselves, very difficult to manage, but running that through Google Analytics as one source of truth in terms of the data takes the complexity out of that. And the final point there, more flexible control of your data and customization. So, there's a number of options with GA and how you can customize your data, but it is not as flexible as once you have that data then in Data Studio. We can chop and change that data and apply a number of custom calculations that can make that more relevant to your business. So to run you through some of the data customization options we have in Data Studio, I'm going to throw you over to my co-founder, Other Elliot. Give yourself some confetti, mate. This is one of the more technical parts of the process and deserves a bit of theatre, I think.
Thank you. I can't get enough of that setting, by the way. So Elliot Shiner here, so one of the co-founders of Bind Media, obviously sharing the same name, which causes quite a bit of confusion for our clients and employees alike. But I'll be going through some of the ways in which you can enhance or enrich your report with custom dimensions and metrics. There are various ways you can go about doing that. So I've highlighted some of our most commonly used formulas within Data Studio. Obviously the connector itself, it does do a bit of ETL, so you get some custom fields through. So for example, things like average CPC and click-through rate that are kind of standardized. But there may, of course, be some metrics that you want to have visibility over that you don't currently, or there might be ways in which you want to group or extract from dimension values. We'll go through these one by one, but we'll kick off with custom metrics. So I've loaded up a blank page of the template, and I've pulled in some metrics that you'll get by default out of the ad connector. So we've got cost from the ad platforms, transactions and transaction revenue from Google Analytics. So one metric that you're not going to get by default from the connector, but we can kind of calculate within Data Studio, is average order value. So to do so, if we go ahead and copy the scorecard, and in the bottom right hand corner, we're going to click add a field. So let's give it a name, average order value. And we're going to want to do the sum of transaction revenue divided by the sum of transactions. There we go. And we can see that this formula is correct because we have the little green check mark here, which indicates that the syntax is fine. So we can go ahead and save that and click finished. And you'll see that AOV now is a field that we can drag into the metric area here, and that should now display. So we can see that the average order value based on this number of transactions and this revenue is 40. Now what we haven't kind of walked through at all yet is the ability to change the formatting of metrics, which is very simple to do. Either you can do it at the data connector level, or you can go into the element itself and you can change that here. So we can give it a currency, for example, of US dollars, and you can see that's updated. And we can also change the decimal precision. So if I change that to 2, you can see that actually the average order value is slightly above $40, but obviously it was rounding it down previously. And I suppose something else we might want to also look at is the return on ad spend. So again, another metric that we're not going to get out of the box, so to speak, but something that we can indeed calculate with the data that we are getting. So very similarly, if we just click again, add a field, give it a name, return on ad spend, and now we're going to want to take the sum of the transaction revenue and divide it by the sum of the cost. And again, click save and finished. And now we can drag that in.
Great, so by default that's pulled in the same decimal precision as well. So we've got that return on ad spend then expressed as a ratio effectively. So for every $1 spent on advertising, we're returning 7.4 or 7.39 in this example. So a couple of e-com examples there. We'll touch on some similar examples for lead gen later on as well, because also very relevant. Again, I think the main thing to point out, as we did with customizing the currencies, make it your own. Take the report, customize that, and very much make the data relevant for your business.
Absolutely. So let's move on to the second example. So extracting from existing dimensions.
Yeah.
Now we've got some data here. I've kind of added some data to the template in the form of campaign name. So you can see that what we're doing, and actually is kind of common practice, I suppose, is we are separating various components with delimiters. So we've got our agency name abbreviated. We also then have the type of campaign, so search or display, and then the geographical market. And here you can see we've got a lovely array of fruit and veg, which we're going to kind of use as an example now for a tool we've built as to how you can extract individual elements of those and then, I guess, pivot the data based on those as dimensions.
Absolutely. So having a consistent naming convention like this, if it's not something you're doing, certainly something we would recommend, particularly with multi-channel campaigns, and having that consistency when we're working with a connector like the Supermetrics ad platform data connector. It's really valuable because then we can use a tool like this to extract these parameters from the campaign dimension, which is comparable across all of the ad platforms. And use that to then, again, just get some filters that are more relevant to your business. So you can see in the tool we've built, we're selecting the dimension we're going to extract from campaign, the delimiter that we've used, which in this example is a pipe, but depending on how you've named and structured your campaigns, that could be different. And the substring here is which section of the campaign do we want to extract. So we've provided some examples below. So in the instance of BM search USA oranges, BM is 1, search 2, USA 3, etc.
So I think for this example, we'll take 4. So we're going to extract, I guess, the type of fruit or veg.
Yep.
So if we go ahead and copy that formula, and we go back to Data Studio, and again, so adding a custom metric or dimension, it's the same process. We're going to add it here as a field.
Yeah, all considered fields. So whether it's a dimension or a metric, Data Studio considers those new fields associated with the data source.
Mm-hmm. So we'll call this type, and there we go. I've put the formula in there, and again, you should see that there is a green tick saying the syntax is valid. And this is essentially using regex to, based on the delimiter we have, and I suppose the number that we want to target in terms of the substring, we're going to extract that value from the campaign name.
Yeah.
So if I go ahead now and drag that in as the dimension that we're looking at, you can see, we had a range of campaigns before where they were sharing this similar type. So this common attribute that they were sharing, we're now able to kind of aggregate that data and look at it slightly differently, which is incredibly useful. Again, if you're grouping campaigns in a specific way or targeting different locations or different products, you can use this to very quickly get some additional insight from the data.
Yeah, and just to stress, so we've added this onto a table here. This could be added as a filter on a page. So you could filter the entire data on a specific page by this new segmented dimension that we've created. And again, think this could be applied to any visualization within Data Studio. So an example would be cost on a pie chart, or a stacked bar with cost, for example. So relating this back to the ad connector specifically in this example, just having the ability to compare this campaign segmentation across all of your platforms is really powerful.
Mm-hmm. And you can see I've just very quickly dragged this in as a drop down field, so we can now say oranges, for example, and you see that the data now is reflected. It's saying, right, any campaign where that criteria is met, and obviously across search and display in various geographies, we're just pulling in, or I suppose looking at the data where that condition is met. So really useful.
Yeah, like I said, a prerequisite to this specific example is the naming conventions. So keep that in mind, and as I said, if it's not something you're doing, certainly bear it in mind for future campaigns as well across multi-channel.
Okay, let's move on to the next example. So using case statements to group or filter based on dimension value. So going back to the dashboard, let's go into edit mode quickly, and we're going to add another field. So we're going to call this category, and we're going to use something called case statements. So if you Google these, so just case statements Data Studio, there's plenty of documentation and examples of how to use these, but we'll give an example here now. So we're going to say case when the type, which we've already defined as a dimension, is in, so I guess meets these criteria. It's either some apples or oranges. We can say then we want to classify this as a fruit. And we can repeat this. So when the type is in, and I think we had lemons and limes, then we're going to call this a citrus fruit. And then we can use like a catch-all statement. So otherwise, if neither of those criteria is met, and obviously you're going to have data that's kind of left over, we're going to call it a vegetable.
Yeah.
And end.
Yeah, so as Elliot said, check the syntax online. I guess that's the important part here with case statements. Google have some documentation for this. In this example, we've grouped some dimensions. So, case when, we've provided multiple values, but this could absolutely be used as well as, I guess, a method of transforming your data and changing. So you could, use a single input at a time just to transform some data as well. So it's not always about grouping. It could be used to transform your data. And again, syntax arrow down here, green bottom left, signifies that Elliot has nailed this first try.
And I think a good example is one that we were talking about earlier, because obviously with the connector you get things like ad group and keyword through, and sometimes you'll have campaigns that are location specific, but that the ad groups are actually across a range of different campaigns. They share the same themes or names. I guess the same for the keyword. So this is a good way to aggregate that, kind of ignoring campaign as a...
Absolutely. Yeah, if there's aggregation you want to do at a deeper level, say it's ad group with one of your search platforms, Google or Bing, or if it's ad set data with something like Facebook, then absolutely, you can aggregate those where you wouldn't be able to at just a higher level, like campaign, for example. Mm-hmm. So in this example, absolutely we're comparing apples and oranges, contrary to popular opinion. But you can see here we've output a new category that we've created based on a type that we'd created previously as well. So we effectively, run these new custom fields multiple times through each other to do, I guess, 2 levels of reaggregation as well. And again, this can be used in all of the visualizations. So as we've got the type filter on the left, you can then use this category to run your visualizations, charts, tables, pies, whatever is going to be relevant and useful for you.
Cool. Right, lovely. So let's move on to the next one, concatenation. And elaborating further on this example that we've got here, let's add another field. And we're going to, I guess, call this...
not join, apparently.
Category grouping. I'm running out of names to call these, but so using concatenation, which can be a really useful feature, but we'll give an example here. So we know we've got the type, so apples, oranges, limes, lemons. Mm-hmm. what we can actually do is kind of create a bit of a sentence out of this. So our there we go, and category.
Yep. So I guess if you're using spreadsheets, Google Sheets, you'll be familiar with the term concatenation. So in this example here, connecting two of our fields that we've already made, type and category, delving deeper into the data analysis of fruit and veg. Now we spat out a category grouping for apples are widely considered to be a fruit. I don't think anyone's going to argue with that, mate.
You never know. Lovely. So, I mean, yeah, that's a pretty straightforward example of concatenation, but obviously you can do that with metrics and dimensions. Like, you can combine as much as you want, really.
Absolutely. I think, we've said, I think, exhausted the fruit and veg example, but really it's just to demonstrate how much you can take what the connector is providing out the box and work with that data to make it more meaningful for you. Again, it's particularly important when we're connecting multiple channels, across multiple ad platforms in particular. The data isn't going to be perfect, inevitably. So having these various options in the way of concatenation, case statements, calculated metrics, you can make it really fit for purpose. So do work with the data, I guess. Don't accept it on face value. Tweak it and make it work for you.
Great. So the very last example we're going to give is parameters. So these are a relatively new feature of Data Studio, and a really powerful one. So in the past, you weren't able to add kind of static values in which you could obviously use to manipulate other forms of data that are being pulled in through your data sources. And these are actually included in the connector, as you probably saw earlier on, in the form of being able to choose whether or not, for example, you sample from GA or setting the conversion windows. So some of those are baked into the connector, but I suppose today we're going to go through a bit of an example of how we can kind of give it a static input that we can use to, like I said, change the data elsewhere across the report. So going in with a slightly different example now. So obviously we were looking at e-com metrics before, and I think it would be a good one to assume that if we're a lead gen company, and we are getting free trials of a SaaS product, for example, we might have a conversion rate on the back end. So once the sales team get the lead through to a customer, and that might vary. And I suppose what would be good is if we could then change what that amount was within the report, as it might tend to fluctuate over time. So like I said, using free trials as an example and copying one of these inputs on the side here. So let's turn this into a parameter that we can use to calculate how many free trials go through into becoming new customers. So let me just change the data source. There we go. So in the bottom right hand corner, we want to select add a parameter, and we need to give it a name. So we're going to want to, I guess, look at the free trial conversion rate, and we can give it either a text number or true or false value. So we're going to give it a number value, and it's going to be a range because I suppose we want to give it a percentage. So in this case, it's going to be between 0 and 1, so 0% and 100%. And by default, we might assume that we convert at 40%, so 0.4. So if I now save this, click Finished, and you can see the parameters appeared in the right-hand side here, so we can drag this in now to become the control field.
So by default, we had a drop-down selected there, so we just changed this to be a slider.
Thank you. I was just kind of staring at the screen. I'm like, why is that not working? Excellent. So let's add another scorecard. So now we've got our slider where we can change it from 0% right through to 100%, set by default to 40%.
Yeah.
Let's go back into edit mode. And now, I suppose using this, we can calculate what the estimated number of new customers is.
Yep.
So let's make a new metric.
Straight back to the first example of calculated metrics. So here, taking the sum of our free trials and now multiplying that by our parameter we've created. So now we have some control over the input value using that slider, which is definitely now a slider.
Excellent.
There we go.
So let's drag that in. Lovely. Okay, so we know that at 40%, which I think is this default value, with 1,420 free trials, we're going to get 568 new customers. Now, what we can obviously do is now change this sliding scale. So let's say that increases to 50%. You can see that that's reflecting the data. So really useful.
Take it a step further. So let's say now we've got a customer's value and we've got a cost there, top left. So we could look at an estimated customer acquisition cost as well. So let's get a CAC value in there again.
Okay, thank you for putting me on the spot, Elliot.
You've nailed every single syntax first time, so I have faith that you can do it.
Lovely. So customer acquisition cost, I suppose we're going to want our total cost, and now we want to divide that by the estimated new customers.
So we've got a calculated metric that is based on an output that is also based on a calculated metric based on a parameter. So now when we drag this CAC in, again, formatting, so we can flip this over to be a currency, change the decimal precision, etc. But as you can see, now with a couple of calculated metrics based on this parameter, with this one little slider, we can then see how these two metrics are going to change. So, great for doing some scenario planning, some modeling. Again, we've given a specific example here, assuming you're going to be using an estimated conversion rate. But you could be looking at, for example, inputting budgets that you've got to work with for campaigns, or you could reverse engineer this to see how many new customers you want to achieve, for example, and run that calculation slightly differently.
Yeah, and this, we're looking at it as a tool to measure your paid media activity, but as a business tool generally now, this is quite powerful because you can look at forecasting. You can sit down and say, we're converting at 50%, but come on guys, 75% please, because that means we get this many more customers and our customer acquisition cost drops from $20 down to $13. So really
3 out of 4. Why not aim higher?
So really useful.
And again, just relating this back to the wider context, we're on a single page here and we're working with a small subsection of the data, but this of course is going to span all of the ad data that you're inputting as well, and that's where the beauty of this connecting to GA really comes into its own. So again, just consider the wider context of all the data you've got in with things like this, the parameters, for example. Great, you nailed all those first try, mate. Fire yourself some confetti. I think that's well deserved.
Boom. Awesome. So lovely. Yeah, that was obviously just some of the ways you can enrich your report. To be honest, there's unlimited number of ways you can look at kind of utilizing the functionality of Data Studio, and it's incredible actually in the last year alone the amount that's been added to the tool, and it seems to be kind of continuing. So there's going to be plenty more to play around with in the future. Excellent. Well, we hope you enjoyed that demonstration of the template. And I guess the point is, it is a template, and make sure that you do get creative and make it your own, with I guess various different ways to visualize the data. Yeah, exactly. So, the blank pages and the modular structure that we've tried to add to the dashboard really adds to the customization. So do experiment with the pages, with the layout, and with the chart types available within Data Studio as well. Of course, Elliot ran through the additional options we've got to customize and segment that data to make it more useful. And I guess the main point, actually result in some actionable data and insights for your business as well. Also the option of community visualizations. Yeah, so I guess new and exciting ways to look at the data, and these are being developed by the community, and you can see here Supermetrics themselves have kind of released a couple of these. Definitely keep kind of checking back. They're being added quite regularly, and I suppose it's just different ways to look at the data that you have and get more insight out of it. Absolutely, it's a constantly evolving catalogue of ways to visualize the data, so do check in regularly. Supermetrics are adding
additional visualizations on a regular basis, which is great. So big thank you to Supermetrics for this collaboration. It's a really exciting project, and we hope the end result is going to be useful for all the businesses that jump in and grab a copy. You have any questions, we'll be around afterwards to answer those. And of course, if you ever want to discuss the dashboard in more detail or touch on any of the stuff that we've discussed throughout the course of the webinar, then please do feel free to reach out.
Absolutely.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you.